If you're an empath who loved someone you couldn't be with, Carl Jung discovered something that will completely transform how you understand that experience forever. After decades of studying the deepest patterns of human consciousness, Jung identified why empaths specifically encounter impossible love more frequently than others, and what he found will shatter everything you believed about your sensitivity being a curse rather than a cosmic assignment. Jung realized that empaths don't just feel more deeply than others. They possess what he called soul recognition abilities that allow them to perceive the authentic essence of another person beneath all their masks, defenses, and social conditioning. When you encountered that person you couldn't have, your empathic nature wasn't just attracted to their surface personality. You were recognizing their soul's true potential, seeing who they could become if they embraced their deepest authenticity. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything about your impossible love story. That magnetic pull you felt wasn't random romantic attraction. It was your soul recognizing a mirror of your own unlived potential reflected through their being. Every quality that drew you to them exists as a dormant capacity within your own psyche, waiting to be activated and integrated into your conscious identity. Jung spent 40 years documenting this pattern in empaths specifically. He found that your heightened sensitivity creates what he called psychological transparency, the ability to see through surface presentations directly into someone's core essence. This gift allows you to love people for who they truly are, rather than who they pretend to be. But it also means you often fall for potential rather than reality, depth rather than availability. The person you couldn't have was serving as what Jung termed an empathic catalyst, appearing in your life at precisely the moment your soul was ready to recognize and develop the very qualities you admired in them. Your impossible love wasn't evidence that your empathy makes you choose wrong. It was evidence that your empathy was guiding you toward your own evolution disguised as romantic attraction. Jung discovered that empaths who understand this pattern stop seeing their sensitivity as the reason they get hurt and start recognizing it as the reason they grow faster than others. Your ability to feel deeply, to recognize authenticity, to love unconditionally, these aren't weaknesses that make you vulnerable to impossible love. These are advanced spiritual capacities that impossible love was designed to refine and strengthen within you. Think about the specific moments when you felt most connected to this person. What were you recognizing in them that resonated so powerfully with something deep inside you? Because Jung believed that identifying these recognition moments is the first step toward understanding why your empathic heart was Jung made a revolutionary discovery about why empaths experience what he called the unavailability attraction pattern. He found that your empathic nervous system is actually calibrated to recognize souls operating at higher frequencies of authenticity and emotional intelligence. But these same individuals are often the least available for conventional relationships because they're engaged in their own intensive psychological development processes. Your empathic radar draws you toward people who are actively working on themselves, breaking generational patterns, healing childhood wounds, or pursuing spiritual awakening. These individuals often can't commit to relationships because they're in the midst of profound personal transformation that requires all their emotional resources. You're attracted to their depth precisely because depth is what your soul craves. But depth also makes people temporarily unavailable as they integrate new levels of self-awareness. Jung called this the empath's evolutionary dilemma. Your sensitivity allows you to recognize the most psychologically advanced individuals, but these same people are often in phases of growth that make partnership impossible. You're not choosing unavailable people because you have poor judgment. You're choosing people whose consciousness level matches your own. And consciousness development often requires periods of solitude and self-focus. But Jung identified something profound about this pattern that most empaths never realize. The unavailability itself serves an essential function in your own development. If these deeply conscious individuals were available and chose to be with you, you might become dependent on their wisdom rather than developing your own. The impossibility forces you to cultivate internally the very qualities you recognized in them externally. Jung observed that empaths who repeatedly encounter impossible love are actually participating in what he called parallel evolution. You and the person you couldn't have are both souls committed to growth. but you're meant to develop separately before potentially reconnecting at a higher level of consciousness. The impossibility ensures that both of you complete your individual development work without using relationship as an escape from personal responsibility. This understanding transforms the entire meaning of your impossible love experience. You weren't rejected because your empathy made you too intense or demanding. You were redirected because your empathy recognized someone whose developmental timeline didn't align with yours, even though your consciousness levels resonated deeply. Jung found that empaths who grasp this parallel evolution concept stop taking unavailability personally and start appreciating it as evidence that both souls are committed to growth. The person you couldn't have wasn't avoiding relationship with you specifically. They were honoring their own psychological development process, just as your attraction to them was honoring yours. Your empathic heart wasn't wrong to love them. It was responding appropriately to genuine soul recognition. But your empathic wisdom now understands that soul recognition doesn't always translate into relationship timing, and that's not a flaw in the system. That's how the system protects both souls while ensuring maximum growth for each individual. Jung discovered that empaths process impossible love differently than others because of what he called emotional archaeology, the ability to excavate layers of meaning from experiences that most people simply categorize as rejection or bad timing. While others might move on quickly from unavailable partners, empaths instinctively understand that profound connections contain messages that require deep excavation to fully understand. Your empathic nature compels you to explore every dimension of the experience. You replay conversations searching for hidden meanings. You analyze their behavior patterns looking for clues about their emotional landscape. You examine your own responses seeking to understand what this connection activated within your psyche. This isn't obsessive behavior as others might suggest. It's your soul's natural research process, gathering data about love, connection, and your own psychological patterns. Jung observed that this emotional archaeology serves a crucial developmental function for empaths. Through deeply examining impossible love experiences, you develop what he called relationship intelligence, an advanced understanding of human psychology, emotional dynamics, and interpersonal complexity that most people never achieve. Every moment you spend contemplating this connection is building your capacity for conscious relationship. But Jung identified a shadow aspect of empathic processing that can become destructive. Sometimes empaths become so absorbed in analyzing impossible love that they miss available love opportunities. The depth of processing that serves you in understanding becomes a prison when it prevents you from engaging with present moment possibilities. You can become so focused on excavating meaning from the past that you lose connection with potential in the present. Jung called this the analysis paralysis trap that catches many empaths. Your gift for seeing layers and patterns can become excessive when applied to relationships that already serve their function in your development. The person you couldn't have doesn't require endless examination once you've extracted the core lessons they came to teach you. Jung found that empaths who successfully navigate this trap learn to balance emotional archaeology with emotional presence. They excavate meaning from impossible love experiences until they've gathered all available wisdom. Then they consciously shift their empathic attention toward creating new connections rather than endlessly analyzing old ones. This shift requires trusting that your empathic processing has been thorough enough, that you've learned what this experience came to teach you, and that continued analysis is now preventing growth rather than facilitating it. Jung believed that empaths intuitively know when they've completed the archaeological work on an impossible love experience, but they sometimes resist moving forward because the familiarity of analysis feels safer than the uncertainty of new connection. Your empathic depth is meant to be applied to building relationships, not just understanding why relationships couldn't be built. The archaeological skills you developed through impossible love were preparation for creating possible love with someone ready to be excavated alongside you, rather than from a distance. Jung made a startling discovery about empaths that will change everything you believe about your relationship patterns. He found that empaths don't just experience emotions more intensely than others. You actually process love through what he called the soul recognition frequency, a level of perception that allows you to see beyond someone's current presentation directly into their highest potential. This extraordinary capacity creates both your greatest gift and your most challenging relationship obstacle. When you encounter someone operating at the soul frequency, your empathic system responds with what Jung termed recognition resonance, an immediate knowing that transcends logical evaluation. You don't just like this person or find them attractive. You recognize them at levels that feel almost like remembering someone you've always known but never met. This recognition creates instant intimacy that can feel overwhelming to people not prepared for such depth. Jung discovered that this recognition resonance often frightens people who haven't developed their own empathic capacities. They feel seen in ways they're not ready to be seen, known in ways they're not ready to be known. Your ability to perceive their authentic self can trigger their defenses against vulnerability, making them retreat precisely when you feel most connected. This isn't because you're too much. It's because they're not yet enough developed to handle being truly witnessed. But Jung identified something profound about how this dynamic serves both souls involved. The person who retreats from your empathic recognition is being shown their own potential for depth, even if they can't embrace it yet. And you're learning to distinguish between someone who recognizes your gift and someone who's ready to receive it consistently. Recognition without readiness creates impossible love. Recognition with readiness creates extraordinary partnership. Jung observed that empaths often mistake recognition resonance for relationship compatibility, but these are entirely different phenomena. You can recognize someone's soul deeply while being completely incompatible for practical partnership. You can feel profound connection with someone who has no capacity for the kind of sustained intimacy your empathic nature requires. This distinction becomes crucial for empaths navigating love. Jung found that empaths who learn to separate soul recognition from relationship readiness save themselves years of pursuing people who can appreciate their depth temporarily, but can't sustain it permanently. You begin asking different questions. Instead of wondering why someone who sees you so clearly can't choose you consistently, you start evaluating whether they have the emotional resources to build something sustainable at the depths where you naturally operate. Share in the comments what you recognized in that person that felt like remembering rather than discovering, because Jung believed that identifying these soul recognition moments helps empaths understand the difference between cosmic connection and cosmic timing. Sometimes souls recognize each other perfectly while being completely wrong for each other's current developmental phase. Jung uncovered something revolutionary about empaths and impossible love that most people never consider. He discovered that empaths often unconsciously choose impossible situations because available love would require them to confront aspects of their empathic gift they haven't fully integrated yet. Impossible love allows you to experience the intensity of deep connection while avoiding the challenge of maintaining that intensity within the constraints of daily partnership. Jung called this the empathic intensity paradox. Your nervous system is calibrated for profound emotional experiences, but sustaining intensity within available relationships requires skills most empaths never develop because they focus more on feeling than on emotional regulation. Impossible love lets you experience maximum intensity with minimum responsibility for managing that intensity long-term alongside another person's needs and limitations. When someone is unavailable, you can love them with complete freedom because there are no expectations for emotional moderation, compromise, or consideration of practical logistics. You can feel as deeply as you want without worrying about overwhelming them with your intensity or having to navigate their capacity limitations. The impossibility creates permission for emotional expression that available love often seems to constrain. But Jung identified this as a developmental phase rather than a permanent pattern. Empaths experiencing impossible love are actually learning emotional intensity regulation in a safe container. You're discovering the full range of your empathic capacities without the complex variables that partnership introduces. This isn't self-sabotage as some might suggest. It's preparation for the kind of sustained empathic partnership most people never achieve. Jung found that empaths who understand this preparation phase can consciously work with it, rather than unconsciously repeat it. Instead of feeling frustrated about choosing impossible people, you can appreciate that these experiences are teaching you to manage your empathic intensity, to feel deeply without losing yourself, to love profoundly without becoming dependent on that love for identity or stability. The impossible love experiences are training you for what Jung called empathic sovereignty, the ability to experience your full emotional range while maintaining psychological independence. Once you develop this sovereignty, available love becomes possible because you're no longer seeking someone to handle your intensity for you. You're seeking someone to share your intensity with, someone who has developed their own emotional sovereignty and can meet you at depths without drowning. Jung observed that this shift from seeking emotional management to seeking emotional partnership transforms an empath's entire approach to relationships. You stop looking for someone strong enough to contain your feelings and start looking for someone skilled enough to dance with them. You stop seeking someone who won't be overwhelmed by your depth and start seeking someone who brings their own depth to create something neither of you could achieve alone. This evolution doesn't diminish your empathic gifts. It refines them into partnership capabilities rather than just individual sensitivities. Your impossible love experiences were preparing you to use your empathy to build relationships, rather than just to understand why relationships couldn't be built. Carl Jung made a discovery about empaths that will revolutionize how you understand your relationship with solitude. He found that empaths who experience impossible love often develop what he called sacred aloneness, a quality of being alone that feels rich and nourishing rather than lonely and depleting. This sacred aloneness isn't resignation about being single. It's preparation for partnership that operates at the consciousness level your empathic nature demands. Jung observed that most people experience loneliness as emptiness, but empaths who've integrated impossible love experiences often find solitude filled with presence, creativity, and deep self-communion. Your empathic abilities, which once focused entirely on understanding others, begin turning inward to explore the vast landscape of your own consciousness. You discover that the depth you sought in another person has always existed within your own psyche. This inward turn isn't withdrawal from love. It's what Jung called preparation for conscious partnership. By learning to be completely present with yourself, to appreciate your own complexity, to enjoy your own company, you develop the emotional independence that allows you to choose partnership from abundance rather than need. You stop seeking someone to complete you and start seeking someone to expand alongside you. Jung discovered that this sacred aloneness often brings unexpected gifts. Your creativity flourishes because your energy isn't being drained by trying to decode unavailable people. Your intuition sharpens because you're not constantly analyzing someone else's mixed signals. Your self-trust deepens because you're making decisions based on your own wisdom, rather than hoping someone else will validate your perceptions. But Jung identified a crucial transition point that determines whether sacred aloneness becomes permanent withdrawal or preparation for deeper partnership. Some empaths become so comfortable with solitude that they unconsciously resist available love because it would disrupt the peace they found in being alone. The challenge becomes learning to maintain your centered independence while remaining open to interdependent partnership. Jung found that empaths ready for this transition begin asking different questions. Instead of wondering whether they'll ever find someone who understands them, they start asking whether they're ready to understand someone else at the same depth they've learned to understand themselves. Instead of seeking someone who won't drain their energy, they explore how to maintain their energy while actively contributing to shared connection. The sacred aloneness you've developed through impossible love isn't meant to be permanent. It's meant to be portable, a quality of internal fullness you can maintain within partnership rather than something you sacrifice for partnership. Jung believed that empaths who master this portability often attract partners who've done similar internal work, creating relationships that enhance rather than diminish each person's individual wholeness. What aspect of being alone has become sacred for you? And how do you imagine maintaining that sacredness within partnership? Share your reflection, because Jung discovered that empaths who can articulate their relationship with solitude are usually ready to evolve from solo wholeness to shared wholeness with someone equally committed to conscious growth. Jung discovered something profound about empaths that explains why your impossible love experience was actually preparing you for what he called evolutionary partnership. He found that empaths aren't just more sensitive than others. You're actually early adopters of a new form of human intimacy that's emerging as our species develops beyond survival-based mating toward consciousness-based union. Your impossible love wasn't personal failure. It was cosmic training for relationship structures most people aren't ready for yet. Jung observed that traditional relationships operate on what he called scarcity consciousness, where partners claim ownership of each other's attention, emotions, and energy. But empaths naturally operate from abundance consciousness, where love is generated internally and shared freely, rather than extracted from others for personal security. This fundamental difference in operating systems makes most conventional relationships feel constraining to empaths, and makes empaths feel overwhelming to conventional partners. Your attraction to unavailable people often stems from recognizing someone else operating from abundance consciousness, someone who loves freely rather than possessively, someone who sees partnership as expansion rather than limitation. But Jung found that many people operating from abundance consciousness are temporarily unavailable, precisely because they're in the process of developing these capacities and can't maintain both intensive personal growth and intensive relationship growth simultaneously. Jung called this the evolutionary timing challenge. Empaths who are ready for abundance-based partnership often encounter potential partners who are still transitioning from scarcity-based relationship patterns to abundance-based ones. The timing mismatch creates impossible love between people who could potentially create extraordinary partnership once both have completed their individual development processes. But Jung identified something crucial about this timing challenge that changes how empaths approach relationship altogether. Instead of waiting for someone else to evolve enough to meet you, you can focus on developing your own partnership skills to such a sophisticated level that you become irresistible to others who've done similar work. You become what Jung called a conscious relationship magnet, someone so clearly committed to growth-based partnership that you naturally attract others with similar commitment. This requires shifting from seeking recognition to offering recognition, from wanting to be understood to becoming someone who understands others with remarkable precision, from hoping someone will meet your emotional needs to becoming someone who generates emotional fulfillment internally, while sharing that fulfillment generously with others. Jung found that empaths who make this shift often experience what he called partnership manifestation, where available partners who match their consciousness level begin appearing in their lives. Not because the universe rewards personal development, but because developed people naturally gravitate toward others who've done similar internal work. Your impossible love was preparing you to recognize and create possible love with someone ready to build rather than just feel. The person you couldn't have was showing you what partnership looks like when both people operate from abundance rather than need, depth rather than surface, growth rather than security. Now your job is becoming someone capable of creating that kind of partnership, rather than just recognizing it from a distance. Carl Jung made a revolutionary discovery about the final stage of integrating impossible love that will transform how you understand your entire empathic journey. He found that empaths who successfully process these experiences don't just heal from them. They transmute them into what he called empathic mastery, the ability to love at profound depths while maintaining complete emotional sovereignty. This mastery becomes your gift to everyone you encounter afterward. Jung observed that empaths who reach this integration stage undergo what he termed a fundamental identity shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who loves too much and start recognizing yourself as someone who loves consciously. You stop viewing your sensitivity as vulnerability that needs protection and start appreciating it as strength that creates connection. You stop apologizing for your depth and start sharing it as medicine for a world starving for authentic intimacy. This shift affects every relationship in your life, not just romantic ones. Jung found that empaths with integrated impossible love experiences become what he called healing presences for others. Your capacity to see someone's authentic self, to hold space for their complexity, to love them through their contradictions, these abilities help others develop their own empathic capacities and relationship skills. But Jung identified something profound about this healing presence that most empaths don't expect. You don't become someone who fixes other people's relationship problems or absorbs their emotional pain. Instead, you become someone whose own integration inspires others to do their own integration work. Your example of loving consciously rather than compulsively shows others possibilities they hadn't imagined for their own relationships. Jung called this the empathic ripple effect. When you transform impossible love into empathic mastery, that transformation radiates outward, affecting your family dynamics, friendships, professional relationships, and community connections. People feel safer being authentic around you because your own authenticity gives them permission to drop their masks and defenses. This ripple effect often brings unexpected opportunities for connection. Jung found that empaths who've integrated impossible love often attract not just romantic partners who match their depth, but entire communities of people committed to conscious growth. Your willingness to feel deeply and love authentically creates gravitational pull for others seeking the same level of emotional honesty and spiritual connection. But perhaps Jung's most profound insight about this integration concerns its evolutionary function. He believed that empaths who master impossible love are actually preparing humanity for more advanced forms of relationship that our species is slowly developing toward. Your individual healing work contributes to collective healing around love, intimacy, and emotional intelligence. You weren't just learning to love better for yourself. You were learning to love better for everyone whose life you'll touch with your integrated empathic presence. Your impossible love was training you to become a teacher of conscious love, even if that teaching happens through example rather than instruction. Jung found that this recognition of purpose often brings deep peace to empaths who've wondered why they had to experience such intensity to learn what others seem to understand intuitively. Your empathic gift was never meant to make love easier. It was meant to make love more conscious, and consciousness always requires courage to develop. Carl Jung's ultimate revelation about empaths and impossible love will forever change how you understand your journey through the depths of human connection. He discovered that what you experienced wasn't just personal heartbreak or individual growth. You participated in what he called the collective healing of love itself, helping to evolve human intimacy from unconscious patterns of need and possession toward conscious patterns of recognition and freedom. Jung found that every empath who transforms impossible love into wisdom contributes to humanity's developing capacity for what he termed evolutionary love, partnership based on mutual growth rather than mutual dependency, soul recognition rather than ego gratification, spiritual communion rather than emotional consumption. Your individual healing work sends ripples through the collective unconscious, making conscious love more accessible to others. This understanding transforms the entire meaning of your impossible love story. You weren't randomly selected for suffering. You were specifically chosen by your soul and the collective human soul to pioneer new forms of loving that our species desperately needs as we evolve beyond survival-based relationship patterns toward consciousness-based union. Your sensitivity wasn't a burden that made love harder. It was preparation for loving at levels most humans haven't developed yet. Jung observed that empaths who grasp this evolutionary function often experience profound peace about their impossible love experiences. The pain transforms from meaningless suffering into meaningful service. The loneliness becomes preparation for connection that transcends ordinary intimacy. The heartbreak becomes heart-opening that allows love to flow more freely in all directions. But Jung's final insight reveals the true gift your impossible love was preparing you to offer the world. You've developed the capacity to love someone's highest potential without needing them to fulfill that potential for your benefit. You can recognize someone's authentic beauty without requiring them to perform that beauty for your validation. You can appreciate profound connection without demanding permanent commitment from temporary encounters. These abilities make you a healing presence in a world where most people love conditionally, recognize partially, and connect superficially. Your empathic mastery becomes medicine for everyone struggling to understand what genuine love feels like beyond need, control, and transaction. You become living proof that love can exist purely for its own sake, that connection can transcend possession, that intimacy can flourish without ownership. Jung believed that this is why impossible love exists at all, not to torture sensitive souls with unfulfilled longing, but to develop advanced consciousness capacities that humanity needs as we evolve toward more sophisticated forms of relationship and community. Your impossible love was never about that one person you couldn't have. It was about becoming someone capable of loving everyone more consciously. Your journey through impossible love has prepared you to recognize available love when it appears in forms mature enough to receive and reciprocate your depth. But more importantly, it's prepared you to offer love as a gift to existence itself, independent of whether that love is returned, recognized, or reciprocated. If this exploration of Jung's insights has helped you see your empathic journey as sacred service rather than personal struggle, I'd love to hear how your impossible love transformed you into someone capable of possible love. Share in the comments what you learned about love itself through loving someone you couldn't have, because your story might be exactly what another empath needs to understand their own experience as wisdom rather than wound. If this resonated with your heart, please subscribe to continue exploring the depths of human consciousness together, and consider sharing this with someone who needs to know that their empathic sensitivity is a gift to the world, not a burden to carry alone. Thank you for trusting me with 30 minutes of your precious time and for having the courage to transform your deepest pain into your greatest offering to humanity.